Imagine picking up an old, dirty penny brown, worn, scratched, maybe even green with age and thinking absolutely nothing of it. Just another worthless little coin that's been tossed around for 80 years. What if that old 1945 wheat penny is hiding one of the rarest and most valuable mint errors in American history? What if that dirty little piece of pocket change, yes, millions? Because hidden among the billions of ordinary 1945 pennies are a few shocking, jaw-dropping mint errors that collectors would do anything to own. And today, you will learn the full story of these mysterious treasures. So buckle in, because by the time you reach the end of this video, you will never look at a penny the same way again. The story of the 1945 wheat penny begins at the end of World War II. America was pushing through the final months of the conflict, and the U.S. Mint was still under intense pressure to produce billions of coins to keep up with the bustling wartime economy. Remember just 2 years earlier in 1943, pennies were struck on steel to save copper for ammunition, went back to copper using recycled shell casings. That means every was forged out of metal that once sat on battlefields across Europe or the Pacific. That alone gives these coins a deep historical weight. But let's move to the known confirmed errors, because there are many rare and extremely valuable ones. One of the most exciting is the occur when the minting die accidentally receives 2 misaligned impressions during preparation. The result? Strong doubling on the date 1945, the word liberty, or the motto some double dies show dramatic spreading or ghost-like shadows behind the numbers. Even minor double dies can sell for $1,000, $2,000. Stronger ones can easily hit $1,000 to $5,000 or even more. And if a bold, high-grade, dramatic double die example is discovered, collectors believe it could reach $20,000 to $50,000 or even push towards 6 figures. A double die found in a jar or a box in dirty, worn condition could still bring serious money because the error itself is incredibly desirable. Another powerful class of errors is the 1945 off-center wheat penny. These are created when the coin blank sits off position in the press. The more dramatic the shift, the more valuable the coin becomes, especially if the date remains visible. A slight off-center strike, maybe 5% or 10%, might only bring $40 to $100. But a massive 40%, 50%, or even 60% off-center strike with a full date 1945 visible, that can easily bring $500 to $2,000, even $5,000. Some of the most dramatic off-center 1945 pennies can reach $10,000 or more. And if someone finds a double error off-center coin, such as off-center plus a wrong planchet, it could skyrocket into the tens of thousands. Wrong planchets. That brings us to one of the most valuable and mysterious categories of all, the struck on a foreign planchet. During World War II, the Philadelphia Mint was producing coins for multiple Allied nations. This mint bins full of foreign metal blanks sat next to bins for U.S. pennies. Once in a while, a blank intended for a foreign coin accidentally slipped into the penny press. That created a 1945 penny made from the wrong metal. Some were struck on silver-based blanks, some on brass or bronze intended for foreign cents, some on much thinner or thicker discs. Known wrong planchet 1945 pennies have sold for $2,000 to $5,000 and $10,000, even more than $20,000. But here's the shocking part. Experts believe many wrong planchet 1945 pennies are still undiscovered. If someone finds a rare composition, say, a coin struck on a silver dime blank or a metal not previously documented, it could bring $50,000 to $100,000, or possibly even more. A spectacular wrong planchet discovery with strong luster or an unusual metal could easily push toward the 6-figure mark. Now let's talk about one of the rarest error types in all of coin collecting, the mule. A mule error is struck using 2 dies that were never meant to be paired together. If a 1945 mule wheat penny ever appears, say, with the obverse of a Lincoln cent and the reverse of a foreign coin or a different denomination, it would be one of the rarest American coins ever discovered. A 1945 mule in any condition would instantly be worth hundreds of thousands. And if it's clean, sharp, and verified, it could challenge the $1 million level. Now here's the part most collectors don't realize. Many of the most valuable 1945 error wheat pennies ever found were discovered in terrible condition. They were dug up from the ground by metal detectorists. They were found in dirty boxes in basements. They were pulled from jars filled with grime. Because error coins get their value from the mistake, not the shine. A 1945 double die covered in dirt is still a double die. Wrong planchet error that's damaged still carries the wrong metal. Off-center strike that's bent still shows the misalignment. That's why collectors always check every 1945 penny, even if it looks like trash. Because it might not be trash, it might be treasure. Today, we're uncovering the unbelievable secrets hiding behind the old, dirty 1953 error wheat penny, a coin so ordinary on the surface, and in the most extreme rare error scenarios, even reaching the kinds of numbers collectors compare to lottery wins. Yes, I mean life-changing money. And what makes this story even more unbelievable is that many of the most valuable 1953 error pennies ever found were discovered in junk drawers, boxes of old coins, dusty coffee cans, and even inside wallets that hadn't been opened for decades. The reason is simple. The most valuable coins in the world rarely look perfect. They're often the coins that went unnoticed, the coins that circulated with now. Let's step back in time to the year 1953. America was changing fast. The Korean War had just ended. Eisenhower was in the White House. The economy was booming, factories were working non-stop, and demand for coinage was high. The Denver Mint was producing millions upon millions of pennies that year, and that is exactly why the rare surviving errors are so incredibly valuable today. When a mint is under heavy production pressure, mistakes happen. Dies crack, shift, break. Blanks jam, machinery misfeeds, and metal composition errors slip through the system. Most mistakes get caught, but just a few escape. Those are the coins that become legends. One of the most valuable and exciting errors is the 1953 double die penny. This can happen on the obverse or reverse. You might see doubling on Lincoln's date, on the letters Liberty, or on the motto, or you might see doubling on the wheat ears on the reverse. Strong double dies can range anywhere from hundreds of dollars in worn condition to several thousands in well-preserved states. And the strongest examples have been known to shock collectors with prices approaching the upper five-figure range at auction. Now imagine a double die combined with a second error, for example, a clipped planchet, a broad strike, or a die crack. Double errors like that are extremely rare and can go for huge premiums. That's where collectors start talking $10,000 to $20,000, even higher. Now let's talk about one of the most dramatic and easy to spot errors, the broad strike 1953 penny. This happens when the collar, the circular metal ring that keeps the coin's shape, fails during the strike. The coin spreads out unnaturally wide and flat. It looks nothing like a normal penny. A dramatic broad strike with strong detail and a clear mint mark can bring hundreds to thousands of dollars, depending on how dramatic the expansion is. And if your broad strike combines with a double strike, meaning it was struck twice outside the collar, values can explode. These double-struck broad strikes have brought insane prices. Die breaks and die cracks are another category of valuable errors. The Denver Mint in the early 1950s was notorious for die deterioration due to heavy production demand. This led to some beautiful and dramatic die break varieties where cracks run across Lincoln's portrait, through the date, across the fields, or through the wheat stalks on the reverse. The larger and more dramatic the break, the more desirable the coin becomes. A major die break on a 1953 wheat penny can bring $2,000 to $5,000, even $1,000 or more, depending on size and visibility. A full cud where a chunk of the die literally breaks off and leaves a huge raised blob of metal on the coin can bring several thousands of dollars. Die cuds are collector favorites because they are unmistakable and look amazing even on dirty, worn examples. Another rare and exciting error is the off-center strike. If your 1953 penny is struck 5%, 10%, 20%, or even 50% off-center, the value rises with the severity. A dramatic 50% off-center strike that still shows the date and mint mark can easily reach thousands of dollars. And a perfectly centered dramatic off-center strike with both date and mint mark visible could theoretically reach $10,000 or more, depending on condition. If an off-center strike is combined with doubling, a crack, or a broad strike, you have a once-in-a-lifetime coin. But here's where things get really exciting. Because some of the most valuable 1953 error pennies in existence have not yet been found, there are still theoretical error types that could show up. A previously unknown double die, a unique off-metal strike, a mule error involving a different die. These are the kinds of discoveries that rewrite price guides. explode into national news, and sell for amounts most collectors never dreamed possible. If a true mule or impossible strike combination were ever discovered for the 1953 descent, it would easily enter the six-figure range, and depending on uniqueness, historical importance, and auction competition. The 1955 wheat penny is one of the most shocking coins in American history. A coin that looks ordinary, worn, brown, old, and dirty scratched, even damaged, and yet, in the right era variety. This little copper, the most unbelievable cases collectors whisper numbers reaching into the hundreds of thousands, and even the million-dollar conversation. And the craziest part? Some of these treasures were found in change jars, old dusty drawers, coffee cans, and forgotten boxes filled with dirty old pennies. People had no idea that they were holding one of the most valuable mistakes the U.S. Mint ever produced. Let's go back in time to 1955. America was booming. Factories were pushing full speed. The mint was under heavy pressure to produce billions of coins. And somewhere in the middle of that intense production schedule, fate created one of the most famous mint mistakes ever recorded, the 1955 double-die penny. A coin that would change the entire world of numismatics forever at the 1955 double-die obverse. The doubling on this coin is so dramatic you can see it from across the table. The date is doubled. The letters are doubled, looks like a ghostly shadow sits behind each character. Liberty looks like two words stacked on top of each other. This error was caused by misalignment of the working hub during the die creation process, and only a limited number reached circulation. These coins were accidentally mixed into cigarette vending machine rolls in the Northeast, which means thousands of everyday people got them without ever knowing they had history in their pockets. Today, even a dirty, heavily worn example of the 1955 double-die penny is worth serious money. We're talking hundreds of dollars for rough pieces, thousands for mid-grade pieces, and tens of thousands for high-end examples. In a perfect condition uncirculated example, they've reached prices above $100,000 at auction. But here's where it gets even more exciting. If a previously unknown double die from the same year were ever discovered, a second major variety, or a more extreme misalignment, that theoretical coin could reach absolutely insane numbers. We're talking six figures easily, maybe even seven figures if it were a one-of-a-kind discovery point. One of the most exciting is the off-center strike. A 1955 penny struck 10% off-center has value. Struck 20% off-center? Even more. But a dramatic 40% or 50% off-center strike with the date still visible, that is where the money explodes. These can reach $2,000, $5,000, even $10,000 depending on sharpness and eye appeal. And if you ever found a 1955 double die that was also off-center, that coin would be one of the most valuable wheat pennies in the world. It could reach six figures instantly. Clip planchet errors are also extremely valuable. These are the coins with chunks missing from the edge, curved clips, straight clips, double clips, bow tie clips. A dramatic clip on a 1955 penny with clear Blakesley effect can bring $1,000 to $5,000 depending on size. A major double clip or a perfectly centered crescent clip might bring $7,000 or more. And once again, if such a clip occurred on a double die penny, the value skyrockets. Another major category collectors look for is off-metal errors. These are extremely rare and extremely valuable. These are the coins accidentally struck on the wrong metal, for example, a penny struck on a dime planchet, a foreign coin blank, or a leftover steel planchet. For 1955, off-metal errors are almost mythical because they are so rare. If one exists, especially struck with the double die, it could easily reach the six-figure mark. Even without the double die, a 1955 penny struck on the wrong metal would be one of the most valuable error cents ever discovered. Imagine holding an old, dirty penny, something most people would toss aside without a second thought. But what if I told you that a simple, worn-out 1940-era wheat penny, yes, that little brown coin hiding in coffee cans, jars, and pockets could be worth hundreds, thousands, or even millions of dollars? What if one of these coins sitting right now in your home carried a secret mistake by the U.S. Mint that turns it into a life-changing treasure? The story of the 1940 wheat penny begins during a turbulent moment in American history. The Great Depression had just ended, World War II was on the horizon, and millions of Americans were struggling to keep their homes and feed their families. Money mattered more in 1940 than almost any other time in the 20th century, and the U.S. Mint was working nonstop to keep the economy moving. They struck more than 586 million pennies that year, all carrying the famous wheat reverse design and the portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front. The most shocking thing about the 1940 wheat penny is how many different errors exist. One of the most famous is the 1940 off-center strike. When a penny is struck off-center, the coin blank doesn't sit correctly in the press. Instead of the design being perfectly aligned, it's punched off to one side, creating a dramatic crescent-shaped blank area. A minor off-center might be worth $20 or $3,000, but a major off-center, something like 50% or 75% off, can shoot into the hundreds or even thousands of dollars. And collectors go especially crazy for 1940 off-center wheat pennies that still show a full date off-center strike with the date intact has sold for several $1,000s, depending on condition. Even more dramatic is the 1940 double die error. This occurs when the design is accidentally doubled during production. Instead of a crisp, single image, the date, letters, or inscriptions appear doubled, creating a shocking 3D effect that is instantly noticeable. Some 1940 double die obverse pennies show clear doubling on Liberty and the date. When one of these surfaces in high grade, that's when the fireworks start. Values can range from a few $100s to over $10,000. But the rarest double die varieties, especially the ones with bold, dramatic doubling, have sold for tens of thousands, and some experts say a pristine, fully lustrous example could even hit the $1 million range if the right collector battle breaks out at auction. Another rare and highly valuable mistake is the 1940 wheat penny struck on the wrong planchet. A planchet is the metal blank used to strike coins. In 1940, U.S. pennies were supposed to be struck on copper planchets, but the mint used multiple metal types for other denominations. Every once in a while, a penny got struck on a dime planchet, a foreign coin planchet, or a leftover experimental planchet. These wrong metal errors are extremely rare, so rare that many collectors spend their entire lives without ever holding one. Struck on a silver dime planchet has sold for more than $20,000. If a previously unknown struck on a rare or undocumented planchet appears at auction, it could easily fetch $100,000 or more. And if an extremely exotic wrong planchet example ever surfaced, something struck on a foreign alloy never intended for U.S. coins, experts believe it could hit several $100,000 or even break the $1 million mark. But the rarest 1940 error wheat penny of all may be the broad strike error. Broad struck pennies occur when the coin is struck without the retaining collar that shapes its rim. Without the collar, the coin spreads outward like a pancake, sometimes even gaining extra width. These broad strike errors look strange, almost like they were melted and flattened, but they are highly collectible, especially when the date is still visible. Minor broad strikes sell for $5,000 to $6,000, but a dramatic, wide, fully detailed broad strike can push into the thousands. And again, if the coin also has a second error like a double die and a broad strike, combined, the value skyrockets beyond anything you would expect for a penny. What about condition? After all, most 1940 pennies are dirty, brown, scratched, or worn smooth. But here's the miracle. With error coins, condition is not everything. A dirty coin can still be worth thousands. A scratch coin can still be a jackpot. A bent or ugly coin can still be rare enough to blow past $5,000. Collectors buy errors because the mistake itself is the value, not the shine. A 1940 wheat penny found in horrible, beat-up condition sold for over $3,000 simply because the error was unique. Another example, dug out of the ground by a metal detectorist, covered in dirt and corrosion, sold for nearly $10,000 because it had a dramatic double strike. Imagine finding an old, dirty penny, brown, scratched, maybe even corroded, a coin so ordinary looking that most people wouldn't bend down to pick it up from the sidewalk. But what if I told you that a simple 1944 wheat penny, even in dirty, beat-up condition, what if one of these forgotten little coins has a mint error so shocking, so rare, that it turns a worthless penny into a life-changing treasure? A coin so mysterious and so valuable that collectors around the world are hunting for it every single day. The story begins in 1944, right in the heart of World War II. The United States was fully engaged in the global conflict, and every factory, every foundry, and every mint was pushing itself to maximum capacity. Copper was desperately needed for ammunition, wiring, ship components, and battlefield communication lines. A year earlier in 1943, the U.S. Mint even switched pennies from copper to steel just to save copper for the war effort. But those 1943 steel pennies caused chaos. They rusted, jammed machines, and even confused cashiers. So in 1944, the Mint returned to copper, melting down millions of leftover wartime shell casings and turning them into wheat pennies. Let's talk about the double dies. First, the 1944 double die wheat pennies. A double die happens when the die itself is engraved twice by accident, creating a dramatic doubled image on the coin. On these rare 1944 varieties, the date, the motto, and the word liberty can show powerful doubling. Collectors go crazy for these because the doubling is no accident of wear or aging, it's a minting mistake frozen in metal forever. Some minor double die 1944 pennies might bring $2,000 to $3,000. But the boldest, strongest double die varieties can hit $5,000 to $10,000, or even more. And if one ever shows up in pristine mint state with dramatic, another extremely valuable category is the off-center strike in these errors. The coin blank was not properly placed in the machine, causing the design to be punched off to one side. A slight off-center might only be worth $4,000 or $5,000. But when the strike is 50% or more off-center, and especially when the date is still visible, that's when the value explodes. A dramatic off-center strike with a full date can sell for hundreds, thousands, or in spectacular cases, even more than $5,000. And if the coin also happens to be struck on a wrong planchet, you're talking truly massive money. That brings us to one of the most shocking errors ever discovered struck on a foreign planchet. During World War II, the U.S. Mint produced coins for several foreign countries, and planchets of different metals often sat in bins next to domestic blanks. Every once in a while, a foreign blank slipped into the penny presses. These wrong metal 1944 errors are extremely valuable. For example, known 1944 pennies struck on bronze, silver, or other foreign alloys have sold for thousands to tens of thousands of dollars. One famous example was struck on a planchet intended for a coin minted for the Netherlands. It sold for over $10,000. Even more dramatic varieties could easily reach $50,000 to $100,000. And if a new wrong planchet 1944 variety is ever discovered, especially one struck on an exotic wartime metal, experts believe it could easily sell for several $100,000 or even reach the million-dollar category. But nothing captures collectors' imaginations more than the 1944 double-struck wheat penny. These rare errors occur when the coin receives more than one strike from the press. Sometimes the coin shifts between strikes, creating dramatic overlapping images. Other times it flips, creating a rotated second strike. These coins look wild, like two pennies melted into one, and collectors absolutely love them. Minor double strikes might sell for $200 to $400. But dramatic double strikes from 1944 can shoot into the thousands. Triple strikes or off-center double strikes can blow past $10,000. And if anyone ever finds a perfectly preserved multiple strike, it could easily hit $50,000 to $100,000. It's the one that collectors whisper about, the one that could rewrite the record. A Mule error happens when two mismatched dies are used to strike a coin. For example, a 1944 wheat reverse paired with a die from a different denomination. Mule errors are extremely rare because the mint usually destroys them immediately. Only a handful have ever escaped the mint in any year. If a genuine mule ever appeared, it wouldn't just be rare, it would be priceless. Experts agree it could become one of the most valuable Lincoln cents ever discovered, potentially reaching the $1 million level or even surpassing it.